Let's start with a question: what truly separates those who thrive from those who just survive? It's not always talent. It's rarely luck. It's the mindset. The way we think daily, the beliefs we reinforce quietly inside our heads, they determine how far we go, how much we grow, and how well we lead. There is a particular mindset I want you to adopt, not just occasionally, but every single day. A mindset rooted in purpose, fueled by clarity, and guided by responsibility. I call it the winning mindset. Not because it guarantees trophies, but because it empowers you to show up fully, even when the results aren't in your favor. The winning mindset starts with this fundamental principle: you are not owed anything, but you are capable of everything. That's a powerful shift. It places you in the driver's seat. No more waiting for someone to recognize your effort. No more obsessing over what others think. It's about embracing the idea that growth is your job, not someone else's gift to you. Now let's talk about how this mindset works in practice. First, stop chasing perfection. Chase progress instead. Perfection is paralyzing, progress is liberating. Every step forward, no matter how small, is part of the win. The people who accomplish great things aren't perfect. They're consistent. They show up on days when motivation is absent, and they do the work anyway. Second, reframe failure. Most people see failure as the opposite of success. But in truth, failure is the ingredient of success. Every setback you face is feedback. It's not a dead end. It's a detour pointing you to something deeper you need to learn. Winners don't avoid failure, they analyze it. They ask better questions. What did I learn? What can I do differently next time? Third, adopt long-term thinking. The winning mindset doesn't obsess over instant rewards. It understands that real achievement takes time. Building something meaningful, whether it's a career, a company, or a character, requires daily investment. Patience isn't just a virtue, it's a discipline. Fourth, take ownership. When you blame circumstances or people, you give away your power. When you take ownership, even for things outside your control, you reclaim that power. You begin to focus not on what happened, but on how you will respond. And that response, that intentional choice, defines your future. Finally, surround yourself with people who elevate your standards. The mindset you carry is contagious. You can't expect to think differently if you're constantly immersed in environments that encourage mediocrity. Choose to engage with those who challenge your thinking, who speak truth, and who demand more of you. In conclusion, this mindset isn't about winning in the traditional sense. It's about becoming a person who leads with clarity, acts with purpose, and thinks with depth. This is the mindset that wins not just on good days, but especially on the hard ones. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Use this mindset today and tomorrow and the day after that, because once it becomes your default way of thinking, you don't just succeed, you lead. 5 keynotes of the speech: you are not owed anything, but you are capable of everything. A winning mindset begins with responsibility, not entitlement. Progress over perfection. Consistency and daily effort matter more than flawless execution. Failure is a teacher, not a threat. Every setback contains insight that can lead to future success. Long-term thinking creates long-term growth. True impact is built through sustained effort over time. Your environment shapes your mindset. Surrounding yourself with high-standard individuals fuels your growth. You are not owed anything, but you are capable of everything. This single statement can dramatically shift the way a person views their life, their goals, and their sense of responsibility. It's not just a motivational phrase. It's a fundamental mindset principle that separates those who live reactively from those who live intentionally. In a world that constantly pushes messages of entitlement, of waiting for the right moment, or hoping someone else opens the door, this principle flips that narrative entirely. It reminds us that nothing is guaranteed, but everything is possible if you are willing to show up, do the work, and take full responsibility for your direction. When we believe we are owed something, success, recognition, ease, we begin to tie our efforts to expectations. The danger of this is subtle but powerful. As soon as the result doesn't match what we expected, we feel cheated. We blame the system, the people, the timing. We become frustrated not necessarily because of the outcome itself, but because of the gap between what we believed we deserved and what we actually received. This mindset breeds resentment and passivity. It traps you in a cycle of waiting, wishing, and comparing. And worse, it blinds you to the most important truth that progress and achievement are built, not granted. On the other hand, when you believe you are capable of everything, the responsibility for your growth moves inward. You begin to see yourself as the source of momentum rather than the victim of your circumstances. This is not a belief in perfection or infinite talent. It is the belief that you have what it takes to start, to try, to improve, and to persist. It's the belief that even if you don't know how yet, you can learn. Even if the odds seem stacked against you, you can still rise. This belief doesn't rely on guarantees. It thrives on effort, learning, and resilience. This mindset creates energy. When you don't expect the world to hand you anything, every opportunity becomes a privilege, not a right. You treat time as a resource. You treat failure as a form of tuition. You don't expect applause. You pursue alignment. You stop asking, why hasn't someone helped me yet? And start asking, what can I do right now with what I have? That shift from external focus to internal ownership is one of the most powerful transformations a person can make. People who adopt this mindset become proactive. They seek out problems to solve instead of waiting for instructions. They practice habits even when no one's watching. They invest in their skills not because someone told them to, but because they believe they have a responsibility to be useful, to grow, and to add value. And value isn't defined by titles or salaries. It's defined by your ability to contribute meaningfully, solve real problems, and lead with integrity. This kind of mindset doesn't protect you from adversity, but it gives you something better, a framework for facing it. When a door closes, you don't wait for someone to unlock it. You look for another entrance, or you build your own. You stop playing the blame game and instead focus on what's in your control. The economy, your boss, your parents, your background, none of those things become excuses anymore. They become part of your context, but not your identity. It's also important to understand that this principle applies across all areas of life, not just your career. In your relationships, you're not owed respect, love, or trust. Those things must be earned, cultivated. In your health, you're not owed fitness. You must choose discipline. In your learning, you're not owed intelligence. You must engage in curiosity and effort. This is a whole life mindset. It's not a motivational high. It's a daily discipline rooted in self-awareness, humility, and purpose. The most empowering truth of all is this: the moment you let go of the belief that something is owed to you, you free yourself. You free yourself from disappointment. You free yourself from delay. You free yourself to create, to lead, and to grow. When you accept that nothing is promised, but everything is possible, you begin to live with greater urgency, deeper responsibility, and fuller ownership of your journey. That's the mindset that wins every day. Progress over perfection. This idea challenges one of the most deeply rooted yet limiting beliefs people carry, that everything we do must be flawless to be valuable. That belief keeps people frozen. It convinces them to wait until conditions are ideal, skills are mastered, and plans are foolproof before they take action. And in that waiting, they miss the very thing that moves life forward: momentum. The pursuit of perfection often disguises itself as standards, but in reality, it becomes procrastination in a clever costume. Progress over perfection is not about lowering your standards. It's about raising your commitment to movement, growth, and action. When someone values progress more than perfection, they shift from obsessing over outcomes to engaging with the process. Instead of asking, is this perfect? They ask, am I learning? Am I improving? Am I moving forward even by 1 inch? That shift changes everything. Suddenly, mistakes are no longer signs of incompetence. They're evidence of effort. Feedback stops feeling like criticism and becomes a tool for refinement. Every imperfect attempt becomes a stepping stone instead of a setback. The perfection mindset often creates a dangerous illusion that if something isn't done flawlessly, it isn't worth doing at all. This is a mindset that breeds delay and doubt. Writers don't write because the first sentence doesn't sound brilliant. Creators don't launch because the product isn't polished. Leaders don't speak up because their ideas aren't fully developed. People don't start because they fear judgment, rejection, or failure. But the truth is, no one masters anything without starting with rough drafts, clumsy steps, and awkward first attempts. Progress is messy by design. It includes trial and error, small wins, frequent corrections, and steady repetition. It rewards consistency more than intensity. Anyone can be excited once, but showing up consistently on the good days and the bad is where real growth lives. That's where skills are formed. That's where confidence is earned. The person who shows up imperfectly every day will always outperform the person who waits for the perfect day to begin. A progress-oriented mindset also helps us stay grounded in reality. It acknowledges that mastery is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong process. There is no final version of your potential. Even the best performers in any field are constantly adjusting, learning, and evolving. They know that improvement doesn't come from obsessing over how perfect something looks. It comes from consistently engaging with the work, reflecting on the results, and refining the approach. This mindset builds resilience. Because when your goal is progress, you become more flexible. You're less fragile in the face of criticism because you understand that critique is not a threat, it's fuel. You're less discouraged by setbacks because your progress lens helps you zoom out and see the bigger picture. You start to realize that growth isn't linear. It comes in waves, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. But as long as you keep showing up, you keep building something meaningful. The trap of perfection is that it ties your worth to your results. If something doesn't succeed, you feel like you failed entirely. But progress decouples your effort from your identity. You're not defined by one moment, one project, or one mistake. You're defined by your direction. And when your direction is forward, even slowly, you're already winning. In real life, people connect more with honesty and effort than with flawless execution. Think about the leaders you admire, the creators who inspire you, the mentors who guided you. What made them influential wasn't their perfection. It was their persistence, their openness to grow, their willingness to start before they were ready and keep going when it was hard. They weren't waiting for perfect conditions. They were committed to progress. Living with a progress mindset means celebrating the small wins, not because they are the end goal, but because they are evidence that something is working. A single good conversation, a slight improvement in focus, a few minutes of practice, a better decision than yesterday. These aren't minor, they're foundational, they build momentum. And momentum, once gained, is one of the most powerful forces available to us. So, choosing progress over perfection isn't a soft choice. It's a strategic one. It's the choice to act despite doubt, to grow through mistakes, and to lead by doing rather than waiting. It's how real transformation happens. One step at a time, imperfectly, but consistently. And that kind of progress is unstoppable. Failure is a teacher, not a threat. For most people, failure is something to be feared. It's seen as a signal of inadequacy, a source of shame, or a marker of incompetence. But that's only true if you define failure as an end. In reality, failure is often the middle. It's a necessary part of the learning process, not a verdict on your worth. Those who adopt a winning mindset understand this. They don't run from failure. They study it. They treat it as a classroom, not a courtroom. Every mistake, every setback, every misstep is an opportunity to examine, to reflect, and to grow. That doesn't make failure easy. It's still uncomfortable, still frustrating, but it no longer holds the power to stop you. It becomes fuel instead of friction. Failure is the price of growth. No one builds strength without strain. No one becomes skilled without repetition and mistakes. Look at any high performer in any field, athletes, entrepreneurs, artists, scientists. Behind every breakthrough is a trail of trial and error. Behind every overnight success is a decade of quiet, unseen failures that refine the person's ability and shape their thinking. When you view failure as a teacher, you stop seeing it as an enemy to avoid and start recognizing it as a partner in your progress. The fear of failure doesn't just come from the event itself. It comes from the meaning we attach to it. We tell ourselves that if we fail, it means we're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy. But that's not truth. It's interpretation. Failure doesn't say anything about your value. It only reveals where you need more clarity, more preparation, or a better approach. It gives you information. And information is power if you're willing to use it. When you fail, you get feedback you can't get from success. You learn what didn't work. You uncover blind spots. You expose weak strategies. You gain insight that sharpens your next move. People who fear failure tend to avoid risks. They stay inside the safe zone where mistakes are minimal, but growth is also limited. But the cost of avoiding failure is stagnation. The longer you play it safe, the more you fall behind. Not because you're incapable, but because you've stopped learning. On the other hand, those who are willing to fail are often the ones who grow the fastest. Not because they enjoy failing, but because they see it as part of the process. They experiment, they adjust, they try again. Each failure becomes a step closer to competence and confidence. Failure also teaches humility. It strips away the illusion that we have it all figured out. It reminds us that learning is ongoing, that improvement is always available, and that no one is exempt from making mistakes. This kind of humility isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It makes us better listeners. It opens us up to mentorship. It helps us ask better questions. And most importantly, it makes us more adaptable. The people who succeed in the long run aren't those who never fail. They're those who adapt quickly when they do. In leadership, this principle becomes even more critical. Leaders who can own their failures, learn from them, and model that learning publicly are the ones who create cultures of innovation and trust. When a leader hides failure, the whole team learns to hide. But when a leader treats failure as a teacher, the team feels safe to experiment, to bring new ideas, and to grow together. The result is a stronger, more resilient culture, one that doesn't just chase success, but understands how to build it. The process of learning from failure also develops emotional resilience. It teaches you to endure discomfort without losing direction. When you fail and choose to reflect rather than retreat, you build a mindset that can handle pressure, disappointment, and change. You stop tying your identity to your outcomes, and you begin to root in your effort and your values. This gives you stability. It gives you confidence, not because you always win, but because you've proven to yourself that even when you lose, you can recover and rise again. Reframing failure in this way changes your relationship with challenge. You start seeking out opportunities that stretch you instead of settling for what's easy. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, What will I learn? That shift in question changes how you approach everything from your goals to your habits to your relationships. You stop chasing perfection and start chasing mastery. Failure is not the end of the road. It's a mirror, a signal, and an invitation. A mirror that reflects where you are. A signal that shows you where to grow. And an invitation to rise stronger, wiser, and more equipped than before. That's what makes failure one of life's greatest teachers, if you're willing to sit in the classroom and learn. Long-term thinking creates long-term growth. In a world that thrives on instant gratification, where success is measured in likes, shares, and fast results, long-term thinking stands out as both uncommon and deeply necessary. It's easy to fall into the trap of chasing quick wins, doing just enough to get noticed, seeking shortcuts to progress, or jumping from one goal to the next without investing the time to truly build anything meaningful. But real, sustainable growth, the kind that transforms your mindset, shapes your identity, and leaves a legacy, requires a long-term perspective. It's not just about where you want to be tomorrow. It's about who you're becoming over years of intentional action. Long-term thinking doesn't ignore the present. In fact, it brings more clarity to it. When you're guided by a long-term vision, your daily actions take on a deeper purpose. You start making decisions not just based on what feels good now, but based on what aligns with where you want to go. This kind of clarity creates discipline. It strengthens your ability to say no to distractions, to delay gratification, and to stay focused on the bigger picture, even when progress feels slow or invisible. The challenge with short-term thinking is that it creates pressure to perform rather than permission to grow. It makes you obsessed with outcomes instead of committed to the process. You start measuring success by how fast something happens rather than how deeply it's built. But growth, especially personal growth, doesn't happen in sudden bursts. It happens in layers, and those layers are formed through repetition, reflection, adjustment, and time. When you think long-term, failure doesn't derail you, it informs you. You don't quit just because something doesn't work the first time. Instead, you pause, review, recalibrate, and move forward again with more insight. This mindset gives you the patience to build your craft, strengthen your habits, and deepen your understanding of yourself and your mission. You don't see each moment as isolated. You see it as part of a much longer journey. Long-term thinking also helps protect your integrity. When you're only thinking short-term, it's tempting to cut corners, compromise your values, or take actions that produce immediate results but long-term consequences. But when your focus is on what you're building over the next 5, 10, or 20 years, you're more likely to stay true to your principles. You begin to measure success not just by what you gain, but by how you gain it. Character becomes part of your strategy. Trust becomes part of your brand, and consistency becomes more important than applause. There's a quiet strength in those who think long-term. They often don't rush to prove themselves. They don't feel threatened by temporary setbacks or distracted by what others are doing. They're grounded. They understand that true mastery takes time, that building something real, whether it's a skill, a business, a relationship, or a legacy, requires sustained effort, not occasional bursts of enthusiasm. They're not chasing moments. They're building movements, both within themselves and around them. This kind of thinking also creates resilience. When you're playing a long game, you expect challenges. You're not surprised when things get hard. You've already accepted that discomfort is part of growth. This doesn't mean you enjoy setbacks, but it means you don't let them define you. You've anchored your effort in something beyond today's results. That anchor gives you stability when things are uncertain and perspective when emotions run high. Long-term thinkers also tend to live more intentionally. They understand that every decision, no matter how small, adds up. How you spend your morning, how you respond to stress, how you treat others, these things compound. Just like money invested wisely, small actions done consistently yield massive returns over time. They don't wait for motivation to act. They build systems that keep them aligned even when motivation fades. That's what makes their growth sustainable. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a decade. Long-term thinkers reverse that. They zoom out, they set bold but grounded visions for their life. And then they zoom in, committing to the small, consistent steps that bring that vision to life. They understand that patience is not laziness, it's maturity. That discipline is not restriction, it's direction. That time is not the enemy, it's the partner. Choosing long-term thinking is choosing depth over speed, foundation over flash, substance over hype. It's what allows you to not just achieve something meaningful, but to become someone capable of sustaining and expanding that meaning over time. Growth that lasts is built one intentional decision at a time. And that's the quiet power of thinking long-term. Your environment shapes your mindset. Most people think mindset is purely an internal thing, something you cultivate through personal discipline, reflection, and motivation. While that's partially true, it overlooks one of the most powerful forces that influence your thinking: the people you spend time with, the conversations you engage in, the content you consume, and the culture you're surrounded by. Mindset does not exist in isolation. It is constantly being influenced, reinforced, and reshaped by the environment you live in. If you want to develop a strong, consistent, winning mindset, you cannot ignore the environment you're growing in. We become like the people we spend time with. This is not just a motivational idea, it's a psychological truth. The beliefs, behaviors, language, and energy of those around you seep into your thinking, often without you realizing it. If you're constantly around people who complain, make excuses, or live with a scarcity mindset, over time, your brain begins to normalize that pattern. You may still want to think big, dream bold, and take ownership, but that mindset becomes harder to maintain when it's not being reinforced by your surroundings. On the other hand, if you're surrounded by people who hold high standards, take responsibility for their actions, and approach life with possibility and purpose, that mindset begins to elevate your own. You start thinking differently, acting with more clarity, and aligning your choices with your values, not just your feelings. Your environment also affects your confidence. Every time you bring a new idea, share a vulnerable thought, or express a goal, the way people respond sends a message to your subconscious. If they dismiss it, mock it, or downplay it, you begin to second guess yourself. If they listen, encourage, or challenge you constructively, you begin to trust yourself more. Over time, these small moments either build belief or chip away at it. That's why protecting your environment is not about ego, it's about energy. You have to be intentional about placing yourself in spaces that support your growth, not ones that silently sabotage it. Even beyond people, the physical and digital environments we live in affect our mindset. Cluttered spaces can create mental fog. Constant exposure to negativity, whether through news, social media, or toxic conversations, can create fear and anxiety. Repeated exposure to mediocrity can lower your standards without you realizing it. The brain adapts to what it's exposed to. If you continually immerse it in chaos, comparison, and criticism, it starts to operate in survival mode rather than in growth mode. But if you shape your environment to reflect your values through order, inspiration, and healthy boundaries, you make it easier to think clearly, act decisively, and pursue meaningful goals with consistency. One of the most overlooked truths about high performers is not just how disciplined they are, but how deliberate they are about their environment. They curate their circle. They choose mentors who stretch them. They distance themselves from distractions. They set up routines in spaces that minimize friction. They don't rely on motivation. They engineer conditions that make focus and excellence more accessible. This isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. When your environment reflects the kind of person you want to become, you stop fighting against it and start being supported by it. Sometimes this means making difficult choices. It means walking away from people who constantly drain your energy, limit your thinking, or criticize your growth. It means having fewer conversations about other people and more conversations about ideas, purpose, and action. It means being honest about what environments make you small and what environments help you expand. And it means remembering that your future will not just be shaped by your intentions, but by your surroundings. You cannot grow beyond what your environment permits. That's why changing your life often starts by changing where you spend your time, who you listen to, and what you allow into your mental space. Every mindset needs maintenance. Even the strongest convictions can erode if they're not supported. That's why your environment matters. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. It holds the power to reinforce your identity, to protect your goals, and to remind you of what matters. It's not just where you are, it's who you're becoming because of where you are. The mindset you want isn't just something you build inside, it's something you build around you. And that building happens one decision, one conversation, and one boundary at a time. The mindset you choose to carry every day determines the quality of your actions, your growth, and ultimately your life. A winning mindset isn't built on perfection or praise. It's built on clarity, consistency, and courage. It begins with the belief that you are responsible for your own growth, that every step forward matters more than flawless execution, and that failure is not a reason to stop, but a reason to learn. It's rooted in long-term thinking, where progress is measured in years, not moments, and where patience becomes your strategy, not your excuse. And most importantly, it's shaped by the environment you place yourself in, because no matter how strong your intentions are, they will always be influenced by the people and spaces around you. Use this mindset daily, not occasionally, not only when things go well, but especially when they don't. Because when it becomes your daily lens, it stops being a strategy and starts becoming your identity. And from that identity, everything else flows: growth, leadership, and a life lived with purpose.